I came of age in the 2010s. I went to college and then sort of was a young man in that period, which was, I would say, a decade that had a lot of Native activism that was focused on what might often be called environmental justice issues. And in particular, the impacts of extractive industries, so mining, pipelines, fossil fuel drilling, et cetera, on Native lands, Native rights to self-government of our territories, and then also on Native people and our environment. And I would say that I was kind of an accidental environmentalist. I'm borrowing that phrase from this, guy, Dr. Robert Bullard, who is sort of the father of the environmental justice movement. And, like I would say other people of color, just the reality of, the disproportionate burdens of pollution and poverty that were just, evident in Native communities, and that there was a lot of, campaigning and activism focused on when I was a young man, led me to the pipeline issue, the campaigns against the Keystone XL pipeline, the Dakota Access pipeline. In Canada, there was this thing when I was in college called the Idle No More movement, which was a movement led by First Nations peoples against this bill that was proposed by then Canadian Prime Minister Stephen Harper called Bill C-31, which included a lot of provisions that would have made it easier for corporations to cross waterways and potentially pollute First Nations territories and waters. And there was a lot of activism that sort of came out of the grassroots from that, and then spilled over to the United States, and then found its way into various things like the movement against Resolution Copper Mine at Oak Flat in Arizona, the movement against the Keystone XL pipeline, the movement against the Dakota Access pipeline, et cetera. And, I was very much sort of swept into all of that, given my sort of predisposition, growing up in a place like Oakland, hearing stories of the occupation of Alcatraz and all that sort of stuff. And, essentially focusing on the pipeline issue, I started thinking more about the environmental impacts of pipelines, the public health impacts, and then sort of following, the oil, both up the supply chain, sort of thinking about the impacts that has on the climate and the atmosphere, and then also up sort of the supply chains of power, the policymaking processes that, basically mean that Native people have very little to no say on these developments, and ordinary people have very little to no say on these developments, as well as sort of, the structures that make that so. And that led me into, I guess, what many people would describe as sort of the environmental movement or the climate movement.